students, and welcome to our last topic of the year. Can you believe it? This week we begin topic number 24, our very last topic of the year. I hope you've enjoyed the year. I hope you've learned something throughout this year. But hey, we're not done yet. We still have another topic this week and a lot more fun before the end of the actual year. So let's not delay and let us not waste our time away, but rather let us be good stewards of the time we have, because that is the topic of the week. Stewardship. So let's talk a bit more about stewardship in general and get into some specific nitty-gritty details this week as well. So hopefully you have your books open to your notes pages in the topic of stewardship, and let's begin. So what is stewardship? It is the careful and responsible management of something entrusted in one's care. The careful and responsible management of something entrusted in one's care. We can phrase that a few different ways. Another way we can phrase that is conservation for the future. We've talked a bit about conservation in the past, and that's basically a very brief, understandable definition of stewardship: conservation for the future. But again, elaborating on that, we could write down that it is the wise and responsible planning, management, and use of natural resources for future generations. Now, we can think of stewardship in many different ways. This definition is very broad when it refers to natural resources. We could think about the mineral resources, the fossil fuel resources, the biological resources, just about any resources that are natural on planet Earth, we could practice stewardship with. But this week we are going to be taking a natural progression from last week when we learned about biodiversity, and we're going to specifically focus this week on the stewardship of biological resources, namely biodiversity. So that's going to be kind of our theme here for most of the week, the stewardship of biodiversity. So keep it in mind that this practice of stewardship, this wise and responsible planning, management, and use of all natural resources can be applied in different ways. So in the context of biological resources, of biodiversity, we've talked about how biodiversity is threatened. We spoke of that last week, and we spoke about different ways in which that biodiversity is threatened. And this week, we're going to take that a little step further. And I'd like to begin this week by addressing three common terms. And we're going to define these three common terms in very simple ways. And I want you to keep these terms in the back of your mind throughout the course of this week. So, the first one is threatened. When we talk about the loss of species, biologists and scientists of different kinds have come up with three different designations or classifications of organisms to help us study just how close we are to losing certain species. The first category here is called threatened. A threatened species is one that is in danger of becoming endangered. And so we'll talk about that word in the next slide. But basically, a threatened species is one that scientists have been studying, and we recognize that the numbers of that species is declining markedly. And if action is not taken, we may not have that species any longer. And you can see on this map, it is color coded according to the number of species that are currently threatened. And you'll see that currently the most threatened regions of the world are Mexico, India, China, Brazil, these equatorial regions that are moist and highly populated are areas where there are a lot of species that are currently threatened. Now, in this definition, in danger of becoming endangered, it begs the question, well, what does endangered mean? Well, here we go. An endangered species is one that is in danger of becoming extinct. And we probably all know what that word means. So you'll see the picture on the left there is of our national emblem, the American bald eagle. We have made great strides in the last 40 years of bringing the American bald eagle back from the brink of extinction. And now you can enjoy seeing the American bald eagle in every state of our country. It wasn't that way when I was your age. You see, when I was your age, the American bald eagle was very scarce. It was in danger of actually becoming extinct. And the reason for that, and here's a brief story about conservation and a potential loss of stewardship and or potential loss of species and poor stewardship back in the 1950s and 1960s. There was a chemical that was being applied all over the place called DDT. Now, in and of itself, DDT's use was for a good thing. It was being spread around to kill mosquitoes, which were transmitting diseases. So the motive behind it was great. Unfortunately, we were over applying it all over the place. And the DDT got into the environment, into various ecosystems, and it began to contaminate waterways, which got into the fish's bodies, and many fish across the country were contaminated with DDT. Now, birds like the American bald eagle are fish hawks, and they fed upon these contaminated fish. And one of the side effects of DDT was that it affected the way the eggs were laid. Bald eagle eggs and eggs of other fish-eating birds of prey, they didn't develop full shells. And so when the mama bird would sit on the eggs that she would lay, the eggs would pop, and the embryos and fetuses inside those eggs would die. We had entire generations of bald eagles that were never born because of DDT. And as a result, the American bald eagle almost went extinct, among other species as well. It just so happens that the American bald eagle is a very popular bird, very notable bird, and it's our national emblem. So very notable in that regard. So it took the work of lots of activists starting up the celebration of Earth Day in April, and authors like Dr. Seuss with the Lorax, but it was predominantly a book written by Rachel Carson, a book called Silent Spring, that gave rise to American environmentalism, which recognized the dangers of the chemical industry and how it was impacting the loss of species on an incredible scale back in the 1950s and 1960s. Once that book became popular and got into the right hands, decisions started being made to ban the application and the production of this chemical and enabled birds like the American bald eagle to come back from the brink of extinction. So, just a little mini lesson within the lesson here on stewardship. All right, that brings us to our third word here for today, extinct. Extinct simply means the species has died out and there are no more left. The great dinosaurs, the dodo bird, the woolly mammoth. These are creatures that once inhabited our planet in large numbers. They are no more for various reasons, whether they were killed off by the after effects of a large asteroid or global warming or hunting to extinction. No matter what the cause, these species are no longer with us, and so we call them extinct. That is the ultimate end of the loss of species. Once a species has gone extinct, contrary to research that we have been discussing with genetic engineering and the possibility of bringing these species back, currently, a species that is extinct simply is no more. So we're ending today on kind of a sad note, but I'd like you to remember these three words as we proceed over the next couple days in our study of stewardship. And so I'll leave it there for now, and tomorrow we will talk about methods of stewardship. But until then, I'll say bye-bye.